Hey, 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 Survivor Rights. It is already Sunday morning, and we are live again today on our Connection show. And we are here with Steve VanDermyden. I am so excited to talk with him because I've had a little bit of an opportunity to chat with him already. So welcome, Steve. Good morning. We are going to talk today about the boundary that we all felt for all those years that we just felt like was not something a threshold we could cross. And it was very confining and very, men and women. It was tough.
Yeah.
And you walked across that threshold and never looked back. That is what I want to talk to you about today, is how you did that and what your life looks like now and all of the things around that. And then we're going to have time for everybody for questions at the end. But what I first want to ask you about is, when did you first realize that boundary was there and you had to cross it?
Yeah. Oh, thanks for having me this morning. But that's a really good question. I had to think about for a bit because I've always realized I've been a non-religious person really since the time I was young.
Ooh.
So when I had to think about that question, I at first there wasn't really an answer, but as I thought about it, I realized it really goes back to childhood for me. That I remember as a 6, 7, 8 year old kid
Mm-hmm.
wondering why I had to go to this church I didn't like. I didn't feel like I fit. I didn't want anything to do with it, but I was stuck going there.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember as a young kid, like, why do we have to do this stupid thing? And at the time, I didn't think of it as a religious thing. It was just something I didn't want to do.
Right.
And as I grew older, teenager, I was more, I guess they would call it rebellious a bit because I did the teenage things that we weren't supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was experimenting with alcohol, drinking some, and uh, dating outside, and going to movies and concerts. And I did those things, but looking back, I realized I kept that separate. I knew there was a line there.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to keep that part of my life separate because it was not approved of. So I guess from the time I was young, I was crossing that line,
Mm-hmm.
but there was never any guilt around it. It was more, that's where I felt I wanted and needed to be, but I wasn't allowed to be.
Right.
So that the line has always been kind of one I've crossed and wanted to cross from the time I was really, really young.
Wow. How old were you when you crossed it?
Um, I've actually finally completely left when I was almost 40. And so I spent about 17 years professing. So I took a 5 year break towards the end of that and went back for a couple years and then finally just left for good. And that was at the time when I got divorced at the same time.
Got it. I want to acknowledge that for people out there that are listening and watching, because I went back twice. You went back. It is a very common, normal feeling to want to go back. And I just want to acknowledge that for people, because I think a lot of people feel guilty for wanting to go back or needing to go back or whatever. And I just really want to acknowledge that is a very, very common thing. And right about now, like, people have been out for a while and they're like, damn, this is hard, like,
Mhm.
at least in there I knew what to do and I knew what the rules were and I was able to. This is like a free fall,
Yeah.
so it's a really. Yeah, I went back twice, and I left for 20. I was 23 years old when I left for the final time. um
Mhm. Yeah, it's a really interesting feeling. For me, I felt like I was living in limbo because I was still married to somebody that was attending. And so I kind of had I was a very limbo social life, really. I wasn't really in, or I couldn't really be completely out. So I was just kind of stuck. So I went back in just because I missed the social side. And because,
yes.
all your friends are there, your relatives are there, and there's just easy acceptance in the way to do it. But two more
Yes.
years of that, and I just couldn't anymore.
Yeah. I get that. I want to acknowledge some people who are out here saying good morning. Hi, Diane. Hi, Melanie. Hi, Fran. Hi, Beverly. Hi, everybody that's out there watching us this morning. This is going to be a fascinating conversation. So, you now are one of the 4 admins on Exposing Abuse. Very
Yes.
large, very public site, very out there. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but what do you feel like making that final choice cost you when you already said you got a divorce at the same time, so we can talk about that if you want. I'm happy to. I've been there, done that. But yeah, it's a thing. And I'm really feeling like there's a wave of divorces about to happen in a lot of people that have left.
Yes,
So
it really can. And, that doesn't mean it happens to everybody, but there's some that are like myself. We're just, you marry somebody that's appropriate, but you're really not the right match for each other. And I think that was the case for both of us, just not the right match. It
yep,
doesn't make either person wrong. It's just, you're just different people, but
yep,
you marry because you check the boxes.
yep,
And some people get lucky and have great marriages through that, and some
yes,
don't. And either is okay, but yeah, that's a very good possibility.
yeah. I run a women's group. I'm here to tell you,
Yeah, and
it's
there's and
complicated.
there's nothing wrong if that is what needs to happen.
Right. But it's also like just talking through that whole thing. Like, one of the things that I really encourage people to do, because a lot of people reach out to me on that specifically, I would be curious about your feedback on this. But I always say, I really feel like people need to individually do their own work on identity and leaving before they
Yes.
try to come back together. So if you're going to try to work out your marriage, unless you're already really best friends and have a lot of values aligned and everything, do your own separate work and then try to come together.
Yes.
Don't try to do that at the same time because it's too much, man.
Yeah, it's a very individual thing, as far as
Yes.
what your belief system is and where
Yes.
you're at and where you're going to end up. And
Yes.
yeah, the relationship is a separate thing that needs to be worked on
Mhm.
separately as its own entity.
Yeah. Yeah. So I very similar to you, my divorce, I got a divorce and left in the same day. So I was done.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was my declaration that I was done.
Yep.
And move forward with my life. So let's talk what else. What else was the cost for you? Why did you go back that first time? And then what was the cost ultimately?
It was the same thing. I went back socially,
Hmm.
and I'm a very social person. I like people around. I like to connect with people. And I spent 5 years without really being able to do that. So when I left, I knew that was going to be the price of somewhat losing family, but completely losing friends.
Yeah.
And, the family was okay. It was challenging for 2, 3, 4 years. But over time, my family's overall pretty easy. They were just uncomfortable and didn't quite know how to handle it. But that all ended up being fine. But I knew for me, there would be a huge social cost. There wasn't any crisis of faith or anything like some have, um, but to me, at the end of the day, there was a lot more gain than there was loss.
Hmm.
Even though the loss it was actually a painful one. The social side,
Yeah.
that was really difficult.
I think that's
But
the biggest reason that we just acknowledged of people wanting to go back. That's the biggest reason people go back. It's not faith. It's not a
right,
faith crisis. There is some, oh, I don't want to go to hell fear.
right,
But I think for the most part, it is, I feel so alone and isolated and scared, and it's
yeah,
just easier to go back.
because we don't know how to build community, where to build community, because we were born in a community. So
Yes.
you're in a place where, like, some go to another church to find it, but then
Yes.
you might want to examine: am I going there for community or
Mhm.
for faith?
Right.
What's really driving me? Because it is really challenging to find that afterwards, and it
Yeah.
does take some strong self-examination to figure out really what your motives are and where you need to be.
Absolutely. I want to talk to you in a little bit about building trust, but I want to get through these questions because I really want to hear these answers from you. What did you think before you left? What did you think it was going to cost you? Did you like analyze through all that? Because you and I both left back when nobody else was leaving. So
Right.
I think our process of what we go through mentally is very different. Than it's easier to leave maybe when there's a mass exodus.
Yeah, it's a lot easier when when there's a crowd. So I knew. I mean, really, I just looked at. I knew what my social cost would be.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, not even being a religious person, there was this weird little fear of hell
Hmm.
because it's so imprinted on you
Yes.
by the group, by the community.
Hmm.
And once I left a month or two later, I realized, well, that was
Well, here we are, and that's totally fine. We are just going to figure it out. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. Um, so, yes, let's just pick right up where we left off. You were talking about the price of leaving and knowing what that was going to cost you, and the moment that you knew you couldn't stay. That was the question. The moment you knew you had to pay that price.
yeah, that's an interesting question because there's a lot of thought about for me about the social side and wanting to leave, but during that time, probably the last 10 years I was in, there was for me, a lot of observation about what was going on. And at the time, I had four young daughters. I still have them, but they're just older now. Um, and I was really watching what the life they had to lead, just how that affected them. And I started seeing the misogyny of the group and the way women were treated and, the second class. And more, I just realized I don't want my kids to be, stuck in that kind of a system. And it bothered me more and more just how the females were treated in that group, in that system. And the more I saw that, the more I'm like, I have to get out. And at the time I wanted my kids to get out, but that's kind of a whole nother story. But that was the moment. And that was probably in the last 2, 3 years before I completely left and ended up getting divorced. But that was a really, really big piece for me.
Mm. Well, I love you for that, just because as a woman and running a women's group for the most part, it is a whole nother level of finding our identity and getting strong and confident in how that shifts our marriages and our lives and our careers and everything else.
Yeah.
So that is awesome that that was your primary reason for doing it. Um,
That was my final catalyst that
right.
really pushed me. Yeah.
Right. So, when we talk about this, because you and I are on the same wavelength about life in general, I think the emotional side of it, the intellectual side of it, the spiritual side of it, like there's so many layers to the whole thing of what you have to do to actually get out. But it also comes a point of survival. Like
Yeah.
that moment that I cannot do this anymore. I remember that moment as clearly as it was yesterday. And I was 23 years old and I'm now 56. So I totally, totally get that. Talk to me for a second about the strongest hold that you had. Was there anything besides the social aspect of it?
No, it was purely social, and for me, leaving was survival. I felt like I was drowning as a person,
Yes.
and I just could not do that anymore.
Yeah.
I was
So,
I was completely losing who I was.
yeah, that I was right there. So, did you leave explosively or did you leave quietly?
Quietly. That's mostly the way it was done back then. It's just
Yep.
you just kind of disappear.
Yep.
I did. I didn't really talk to anybody. I know my younger brother was approached by the workers, two sisters that were there at the time, asking if they should have a talk with me. And he says, his comment, he says, I told them they probably shouldn't waste their time.
Yeah. So, talk to me for a second. I want to talk about the social reconstruction that you've gone through, building trust with outsiders outside the bubble.
Mhm.
I talk a lot about life outside the bubble because it's a whole nother world out there. And it isn't just the social aspect of it, it's the way things are done. It's the way the world makes decisions. It's the way we navigate life. It is so,
Mhm.
so different than the bubble that we are from. Talk to
Yeah.
us for a second about what that looked like for you and how you're
That's
Yeah.
been a really fascinating piece for me because I still feel it 24 years later.
Yeah.
Um, I look at it in little ways like we knew exactly how to act, how to talk, how to think. We were told. So it was pretty easy. But I even go back to some really simple things like, socially, you knew what time to show up to a potluck. You knew what to bring. You knew how to start a conversation, who to talk to, how to, meet somebody new, what conversation to have. There was like a pattern to everything. And there was just a prescribed way of being. And all of a sudden you're out there and you're like, how do you order wine? Uh, you know, and somebody invites you to a little gathering. You're like, well, what time do I go? How long do I stay? Do I
Yeah.
bring anything? What do I
Right.
bring?
Yeah.
What's appropriate? How do I dress? Uh,
Yes.
it's really simple things like that that you don't even realize you just aren't aware of that much of how to
Right.
do them. And socially, that's where I started to have to reconstruct. But more than that, there was on the emotional side. We were so told what to think that we didn't really have any emotional capability of our own, no emotional intelligence, no patterns of communication that were healthy.
Right.
And I realized all of those were just a big blank in my life. And that's a lot of the piece that I really focus on needing to reconstruct.
So we're going to talk a little bit more about all of that, but what would you say is the strongest thing that you have rebuilt out of all of those things? Where do you feel the most confident now?
I would say, the communication's a big one for me. That's really strong. Emotional intelligence, authenticity,
Mm,
just, and that really just learning to be who you really are.
yeah.
And a lot of it is you end up being the same person, but you're more authentic about it. You just know this is me and this is who I am and how I live. I can communicate. I can be vulnerable. I can be real. I don't have to, um, fake things to look right, to act right, to sound right.
Right.
I spent too many years doing that.
I think that that is very fascinating. And one of the reasons that I'm talking to so many men and you specifically is that you are strong in that, like your sense of self. You've also been out for a long time. So I feel like, Steve Patton says this a lot. I'm going to say this to you again today. I feel so strongly that we have to model for people what to do because what was modeled for them for all these years. And it's like, men aren't super going to therapy isn't at the height of their list.
Yeah.
And so finding a way to um be vulnerable, to figure out who they really are, to treat their wives differently than they have all these years, to let the ego step back and to let their heart move forward. There's so many aspects to all of this, and that's what the conversation that I really want to get into with you now. Is there anything about um, that you would say I didn't know that I was this person, or did you always kind of have a sense of this is who I was?
I didn't know. I just knew there was a large void in myself that I couldn't understand. I didn't know how to fill it. I didn't know what it was, but that's the piece it turned out to be. But I knew it intuitively. It was missing and it didn't feel good. I felt incomplete. And once I started learning really learning how to communicate is what really pulls that piece together. Because once you start communicating, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be authentic and you have to be able to express yourself and understand others' emotions and feelings and empathy. And, it all is a big packet. But once I found those pieces, that's when I started feeling myself.
Okay, then you got to know where I'm going to go next. Where does somebody start, Steve?
I always go back to learn how to communicate. That it's like the
How?
foundation for everything.
What did you do? How did you learn that?
That was a lot of conversations, and actually, a lot of that was with my second wife, who was kind of really big on communication. And I learned a lot with her through her of how to communicate. And I wanted to, but she was pretty good at holding my feet to the fire and, learning how to apologize, learning how to be vulnerable, because she wouldn't accept anything less.
Mhm.
And so I stepped up to it but I also wanted to. There has to be a desire. But I spent, a lot of years just learning how to have better conversations. And you got to, if I had to do it over now, there's courses and classes, and there's so much available now.
Yes.
I kind of had to do it the hard way,
Yeah.
just trial and error and figure it out. And I did, but there's so much available now. Courses on communication, on vulnerability, there's coaching, there's just all kinds of things available that just weren't 25 years ago.
Right. I say to women a lot, especially that have left the 2x2s, that we need to establish just a minimum standard. Like women, as women coming out of the 2x2s, that just minimum basic standard of confidence and basic standard of how somebody can talk to you and treat you and
Yeah,
acknowledge you is so, we spend a lot of time in Worthy on that. And I started Worthy because I thought, oh, it's gonna be fun. We're gonna learn how to do makeup and hair and mm-mm. You know what we do? We spend a whole lot of time talking about this. How do you as a woman learn to not let that guilt and that shame and all of that just seep down into your bones in a way that you can walk in the room and own it and,
yep,
be confident and be like, and you don't have to, I'm not saying anybody has to have sass like I do. I would not recommend it. Actually, it's a very hard way to live.
but you do have to be yourself, whoever that is.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly that. So that authenticity piece, talk to us for a second about that, because that comes with communication. And that's who, like, I call it, I always say, to me, my definition of authenticity is who are you when no one's looking?
totally. And I kind of want to go back to what you were saying about, how women carry a lot of the weight and the guilt. Men didn't have to.
Right.
And it's a system that's very male dominated. And as a male, you didn't have to apologize. You didn't have to worry about feelings, and it just didn't matter. And really, to learn to be authentic, you have to learn those things. You have to, as a male, learn to be vulnerable, learn to apologize, learn to appreciate your partner, your spouse. It's learning to kind of be humble, to be vulnerable. That allows your partner, your spouse, to be themselves too. So
So
there's a lot on both sides that needs to be done. I mean, women have to be able to own themselves, like you're saying. Men have to learn to communicate, be willing to be vulnerable, to meet in the middle instead of just being the one that is right.
that's what I was just going to say about the 2x2. I think in the 2x2 church, men are, ironically, while you're supposed to be humble and you think you're being humble, you're being very self-righteous and condescending.
Oh, absolutely. Because no one's going to argue with you. Your word is final.
And your wife's going to take it.
Yeah,
And that is where I really feel like, I pray to God that I'm wrong about this wave of divorce that's coming, but I hope instead that people, like we said at the beginning of the show, if people can learn to do their own work individually, like I say it to everybody, my number one question when people come to me is, where's the urgency coming from on ending this relationship? Because I really feel like if you could just take the urgency piece off of it and start and just give yourself space to do your own work, figure out your own selves,
yeah,
then you'll be able to come back together and then decide if you
yeah,
need to stay married or not.
yeah. Because I feel like everybody needs to find their own self, their own authenticity, because in this system, you are one. The two
Yes.
of you are as one. And there is
Yes.
no self anymore. And the one is also a part of the church. So you are just as one, as part of the church. There is no couple, there is no self. You're just part of everything. And I think people need to first find out their path, their own self. But then the relationship is a piece that comes not after, but separate.
Yes.
That a strong relationship is something you build outside of yourselves.
Yes.
It's like, you work on your house, you remodel your house, you take care of your house. You have to
Mhm.
kind of look at a relationship as the same thing. It's not who the two of you are. It's something you build together outside of yourselves. And when you start looking at it as something separate that you're building together, you take a different approach to it. And one of the things I like is be on the side of the relationship. It's, not what I want. It's not what I think you want. What's good for the relationship? Be on the side of the relationship first when you're working to specifically build a relationship.
Love that. I love that. Especially, I say a lot, the number one place that women have to start deconstructing individually is that we are people pleasers. Like that church, two things happen to women coming out of the 2x2s. On one arm, we are people pleasers like no other. On the other arm, there's like a silent strength that's been going on down in here. Like my therapist says, like, that church had no idea that they were really creating some incredibly strong women.
Yeah.
And man, when you find that strength that has been growing in you, it's like the seed of anger and frustration, and you put me down all these years, like all of that starts to come up to the surface, and you feel like a horrible person for a little bit, like because you have these horrible thoughts. And then it's like, you know what? That's why I say you don't have to be sharp to be strong.
No.
Like, but it's again modeling it, finding a way. That's what I'm trying to do here with this conversation. Lots of conversations like this is the more we can talk about this and model for people what healthy relationships look like, what healthy self-esteem looks like, what having a boundary, having a standard looks like in the real world. We were just talking before we had our mishap was about the bubble, being in the bubble and how different the world is outside the bubble.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you found someone else and remarried. Talk to us about what that looked like and what happened with that. I know you have had a great loss there. I want to hear from you how you navigate that when you are vulnerable, when you become vulnerable, and as a man, all of it.
Navigate the marriage or the loss.
Let's start with the marriage.
Okay. Well, she was actually a former 2x2 also. So we kind of we didn't really, she did some deconstructing, but more of the social reconstructing and learning communication. All we did a lot together, which helped to have somebody that had a similar kind of background.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a pretty fascinating journey to go through together, both leaving, and we married like 4 years after I left. And that was we learned so much. And then when she passed away 10, 10 years ago, 12 years ago now, it's been a while. Yeah, that was a great loss. But one of the great things is with that much communication, that much knowledge of each other, it actually really helped me get through the whole loss a lot better too. Because, I knew she was okay. She was in a good place, and she lived the life she wanted to live and needed to live. So she was living a really authentic life. And so, yeah, there was a lot of grief, but there was also a lot of understanding and just being okay with how things were.
Yeah. That is an amazing place to get to. Talk to us for just a second about how you stay in that space now. Are you in another relationship now?
Yes. Yeah, I've been married for going on 8 years now.
And so how do you what would you say to people who are listening today about staying in that vulnerable place and how worth it is and what partnership really truly looks like as a man?
It's fascinating when you learn as a man to become vulnerable, to become authentic, your relationships become multifold better. I mean, just 10 times better. There's that old saying, "A happy wife, happy life," that men throw around a lot. And honestly, I think that's a cop out. Like, I'll just give him whatever she wants. We'll just go with that. That's really a cop out to having an authentic relationship. If a guy would learn to be authentic, to be vulnerable, to learn how to communicate with her, he'd find out that the relationship will blossom and she'll be 10 times happier. She's not just being acquiesced to because that's what she wants and I don't know what else to do, so I'll just do that. Healthy discourse. There's a lot of, in the 2x2 way, but it's a lot in society too. People will say, yeah, we never argue, we never fight. Well, they'll get to a therapist and realize, oh, we're conflict avoidant. We just won't have the real discussions. And that kind of goes along with that happy wife, happy life thing that, yeah, we'll just kind of, whatever she wants, we'll just kind of do that. But they don't thrive. That's not thriving in relationship. It's, the conflict and the learning how to repair conflict is actually where relationships grow,
Mhm.
and they become deeper and, way, way closer the more you're able to go into the authenticity.
I love that. For those of you watching out there today, if this is something that you guys would like to have a lot more about, I think Steve, you would be willing to do that to help us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We can have classes just on this specifically for men, but women too. Like I think that this dialogue is fabulous for men and women because the identity piece. Jared's going to be on this week talking about the spiritual side of that also,
Mhm.
and finding your identity. He went from being a Lerwick to like walking into a church and nobody cared. I mean, nobody cares that his last name is Lerwick. It's like, it is a shock. It is a shock that no one cares in the real world, in the bubble, outside the bubble, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a very small pond at the end of the
it's a
day.
very small pond. Yeah. Um, and yeah, it's a very, 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 very small pond. So what does your life look like now? What did you do with that? Your life changed because of what you learned. Talk to us about that.
Oh, it's hard to say. My life it's very happy. You know, I mean, that's the easiest way to describe it. I live in happiness. I'm joyful. I've been through a lot in the last 10, 12 years, but you never really lose the joy when you live your real, true self. I remarried almost 8 years ago. We have a great life. We live in Portland now, in Oregon, and it's been wonderful. Any kind of connections, relationships, friends, all tend to be deeper and more communicative. It's amazing the conversations you can have with anybody that are much more fruitful. More, there's just more to them. I find for myself, I don't enjoy idle chit chat or cocktail talk. It doesn't serve me anymore.
I'm with you. And we did that so much in the church. It was just so much about, I don't know, it's stuff that doesn't really matter at all.
Weather, workers, travels,
Yes.
who's
Yeah.
related to who, and that was about it.
Yes. Who's
Yeah.
doing what? It's so much judgment, so much like talk to us for a second about the judgment piece of it because
Hmm.
I have learned like my two by two friends, I struggle with the biggest part of that relationship is they think I'm judging them all the time. I don't. I
That is,
truly
yeah.
am not judging at all. I love you. I love you for who you are. I accept you for who you are. I am not sitting, I don't hang up the phone and think, oh, if only she would never. Because I have learned in my life that what real unconditional love means. And if you're my friend, I just love you and I want the best for you. I don't judge. Talk to us about that, Steve.
That has been one of the probably hardest things for me to unlearn. Anything outside that bubble is bad, wrong, and we should judge and disdain it. I mean, scorn it, look down on it. So yeah, judgment is really, really huge. If it's of the world, it's bad. And I've realized for myself that often translated anything I don't understand. If I don't understand it, I'm going to look down on it, scorn it. I've worked for 25 years to let that go. And it's pretty good, but there's still a flavor of that there. And because that is something that is really, really pounded into you as a two by two, that, you judge everything that is not inside that bubble. Because how else do you keep people in that bubble? Except being told that anything outside is bad, it's horrible, look down on it. I remember back at a time when therapy was looked down on. That's just, it's too worldly. It's college was looked down on. I mean, anything that might uplift you was looked
Yes.
down on. So judgment is a huge, huge thing to let go of. And yeah, we see a lot of people struggling with that even in our Facebook group.
Yes.
But we also see a lot of people let go of it over time. That's been one of the really cool things there.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Daryl's asking, what is it about the 2x2 system that takes differences and interprets it as a personal attack? We are learned to control that.
Yeah.
The whole judgment piece is because that's how they maintain control.
Yes. And what to answer his question is, we were taught that there's one way of thinking. So there is no ability to have discourse. And discourse is like, we agree to disagree even. If you think different than me, you are just wrong. It's not a discussion. It's not a debate. You are wrong. And that's where the thinking comes from. That you can't have, we've seen this on the Facebook page. People at first really struggle with opinions that don't match their own.
Yep.
And they want correction. They want them, those people shouldn't be on the page or whatever it is.
Yep.
But over time, people learn that, one of the things we really push on the page is open discourse, because people need to learn how to debate healthily. And of course, we were never, ever allowed to do that. And debating and discourse is questions. Ask questions. That's how you learn. So you can't ask questions. You judge everything. You don't have discourse. You don't debate. A healthy anything, a healthy relationship, a healthy church, a healthy political structure thrives on discourse and debate and differing opinions and understanding that different opinions are okay. And that's a really tough thing to understand when you're just coming out of that system.
I agree. I really applaud the way you guys run that too on Exposing, and running two groups myself. I have had a lot of people send me messages, oh, that person needs to be removed, and this, like, they report content, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh. But also just teaching people, I try very hard to model an appropriate response, to model tolerance. I say it all the time. We're here to learn tolerance. Tolerance is the antithesis of judgment. Like, just the ability, like the filter system, if you can just take in the information and sit with it for 30 seconds instead of instantly reacting and judging.
Because that's a reaction that comes from protecting the bubble.
Yes, that's why the bubble exists. It's how the bubble exists. Why and how the bubble exists is we stay in this, and that is it. And so, a lot of people are 40, 50, 60, 70, and even 80 leaving their entire lifelong programming.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot to let go of. Yeah, the only thing we'd see more of is, this goes back to men and women in communication. I'd say 80 to 90% of the people out there fighting are women, because honestly, they have a lot more to fight for. The more oppression there was, it's easier for men, so the fight's not as strong. And yet we need more men to step up and fight and be more vocal. But as men, in that system, we weren't taught that we needed to speak, to have emotions, to fight for it, because we had it kind of easy. But there's some men that are doing a great job, but boy, there could be a lot more.
Okay, I want to have that conversation really quickly, because my conversation, if you go back and watch Mike Grosseth's interview with me, he says a lot. Men privately with him have a dialogue about how they feel about things and what they really think, but they will not step up and say that publicly. They will not, like, even my choice on having Survivor Rights be a public page, I did that on purpose.
We did too.
Yes, it's a very conscious choice, because they don't understand the power that comes with not being afraid anymore, just to be real and authentic,
Yeah, and men have never been oppressed to the point where they're desperate for that. Plus, men aren't taught to have emotions and to be expressive. So part of it is they kind of almost don't know how to do it. And that's a lot what needs to be taught and learned, is just for men, is how to be vulnerable, how to communicate what you're feeling, or even before that, learn what you are feeling so that you can feel it, express it, and be vulnerable.
Right. So it's the judgment, but then what comes right after that is the fear of being judged and the fear of
Yeah.
disappointing people and the fear of, like, there's so much to it. So, and I try so hard. I struggle. I want to know what your thoughts are on this, but one thing that I have struggled with, especially in Worthy, and Kelly has really stepped up. Kelly Graves has really stepped up in that group and helped me kind of bridge that gap. And so has Rosie Rasmussen. I've been out for so long, and I'm really a bold human. That's a really tough combination to reach people who are just now leaving,
Yes.
and to not, for them to not, like, they watch me sometimes and they're like, girlfriend, you might, yeah, I don't even know who you are,
I
are you
can be
sure
a
you
bit the
haven't
same.
been yeah, okay, so it's a struggle because I've been
Yeah.
out for so long, and I'm so strong, bold, that personality comes through that's like, but I've also been through so much, and I've learned, I've done the work. I
Yes.
didn't just wake up one day and be like authentic. I did not wake up authentic one day. I did not. I have done years of work.
It takes a lot of work.
Yes, and a desire to change.
Yeah. One of the things I learned about around being authentic is after my divorce. And it's funny because men can be people pleasers too, but in a different way than women. We just want everybody happy, so we'll just do whatever they want. And I was trying to keep four kids happy and an ex-wife kind of happy, and I'm still responsible for their happiness. And I finally had to learn that when I spoke my truth, they were actually happier. And that
Mm,
there's a really big lesson in that when you're authentic, you speak your truth kindly, but people feel when it's your truth, and they're
yes.
okay with your truth, even if they don't agree with your truth.
Yes.
But authenticity resonates with people like nothing else does. People
Amen.
intuitively, instinctively feel when you're just being a little bit sketch about, you're not really authentic. You're just trying to please them. People feel that it's really manipulation.
Boy, we had that duplicity down, didn't we?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Ah! I want to know what questions you guys have. We are short on time, and I try to stay, but I'm going to keep you a little bit longer if you
That's
don't
fine.
mind.
Yeah.
Any questions out there that you guys have for Steve? Tell us what you would like to know from him in our next conversation. Um, Tell us, because the next thing I'm going to ask you about is your work, because you do this for a living. I do it for a living as well. So talk to me about what that looks like.
Well, I have a relationship and communication coaching business, and it really came out of my journey. And I think of, a lot of us that do this kind of work, it comes out of our journey, whether it's being a therapist, a coach, and we all kind of gravitate to where we had to do so much work that we become passionate about helping others in that same area. And you do so much work, you kind of have a skill and an affinity for it.
Yep.
And so I love communication. So I love working with couples, helping them find communication again.
Mhm.
Um, I have some friends that work more with young couples. I like to work with people that have been in it for a while and, you know, needing to refine and refigure out how to communicate and rebuild or learn how to build communication, how to build a relationship foundation that they were never really taught.
I really have found that it's also a great skill to have in business,
Yes.
negotiation, anything to do with life. Kelly's asking if you're related to Sherry.
Yes, we're
Yes.
cousins.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, did you know about her abuse?
I did probably 10 years prior to all of this.
Mhm.
Yeah, when she was starting to send letters out, I think it was like 2009, 2010. So I was aware of it then, yeah.
So, for those of you who missed this earlier, Steve is one of the 4 admins for exposing abuse. So,
Yeah.
in case anybody missed that, um, that is where you would see him and recognize his name. Any other questions that you guys have out there? I know this is a lot of information. This is the other thing that I've also learned, Steve, specifically from Worthy, is that, and Survivor Rights is new at doing this. like this, but it took a couple years for people to hear it over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
Now, now they listen and absorb so much more quickly, and they have questions. Right now, what I have really learned is that they don't even know what to ask.
Yes.
They're
So
literally
true.
sitting there like, that all sounds amazing, and I would love to be where you two are right now, but I don't even know where to begin. And that's the beginning of this. So, for those of you that are out there, I want you to know that every single one of you watching this probably is feeling the same way. It's a very common thing, um, and they don't know what to ask. It's like,
No, I
how
mean, how could you know what to ask when you don't even know what you don't know?
exactly?
And interesting enough, on the Facebook page, we've tried to start that conversation a little bit.
Mhm.
I've written a little bit about it. Mike Groseth has. So he's a moderator for us now, and he's been a great help there. But we want to kind of start addressing that side a little more. It's like, where do we go from here? Because it's
Yes.
very, very easy to be caught in the turmoil, the emotions of the pain. And I notice that every time there's a new worker letter that's just ridiculous, people get really worked up about it, and there's a lot of comments.
Mhm.
But it's really easy to get caught up in that over and over. And it's like this cycle. It's like staying in the cycle of abuse almost.
Yes.
It's feeling that, you really get really worked up by that emotion, but that's actually a comfortable pain point.
Yep.
And it's easy to stay in that pain point where really what we want to do is like, where's the off ramp here? Where can I go from here? And that's the
Yeah.
conversation that I want to be having more is, where do we go? How do we grow? How do we learn? How do we shift? Where's my particular off ramp? Who am I? And I think
Yes.
a lot of conversation just about learning who we are as individuals and our own path is really where it has to start. But yeah, you're right. People don't know.
This is exactly why I wanted you on this show right now, early. We got to start having this conversation wherever we have it. I don't care. I don't, even if survivor rights ends up dissolving into where pathways or whatever. All I'm trying to do is bring this conversation to the forefront in a way that we're doing it on a weekly basis, that people can know that conversation is going to be had. We're going to have a connection. They're going to be able to feel from us the authenticity of what it's like to get 10 years down the road and to know the joy that we have in our lives, uh,
Absolutely.
and that we can come at, maybe we don't agree on everything, Steve, you and I, maybe we don't, but I
We
can
don't
tell
have to.
you, we don't exactly.
You can be
Exactly.
right.
Yeah. And it doesn't bother me if you're right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't bother me if you think I'm wrong. Like,
And the thing is, there's also space for both to be right and be different.
yes.
That's the real truth is there is no one way to be right. It's
And we're
more
just
about what's right for you.
yes. We're so used to there's one right way. One right way. There's only one right way to do everything. There is not. There are a million ways to be right in the world. It's just like all of the criticism that a lot of us get about, like, oh, she's trying to start a new church, or she's trying to, no, no, this is not about spirituality.
Yeah.
I walk that line. I will say 50% probably of worthy, which is 950 women or something like that now. 50% of them very diehard Christians and want that in their life. The other half don't want anything to do with it. We're
Yeah.
like, this
That's
Tuesday, that half of us are going to be wearing red ribbons around our wrist for the Chinese New Year and stepping into the astrology of that and the
mhm.
numerology of that. Like, we have fun with it. Like, it's because my personal belief system is that there is a grand overall designer. There's not like one way. There's many, many ways. And
Absolutely. Yeah, that's
I
the
look
same
at
thing
it.
we try to pay attention to on our Facebook page is it's not a Christian page, it's not a religious page. It's about exposing abuse and supporting the survivors. And what
Yes.
we've really realized is part of that exposing abuse is the spiritual abuse.
Yes.
It's not just sexual abuse, child sex abuse. It's the spiritual abuse and supporting those survivors in a space that's safe, but it's also we don't allow theological
conversations on there, because there's places for that. We try to keep it really focused on how do we grow, how do we deconstruct what we've been through, how do we understand the different forms of abuse we've been through. That's what our page is for.
Yeah. And, I also want to acknowledge, and I would be curious what your perspective is on this, having a little bit of a dialogue right now with some people on, the anniversary coming up on March 23rd and the whole concept around sister workers. I listened to the Bridging the Gap thing this week about what happened in Australia and the sister workers and the way they were treated there. I also have several sister workers inside of Worthy, and I'm very, very close friends with an ex-sister worker that's been out for 22 years. And so I feel like that sister workers in general had a very uniquely level of hell. But also the other side of that, speaking of discourse, is a lot of sister workers did some really serious damage and
They did.
hurt.
Yeah. And the way I saw that is it's kind of like the brother workers. As they age and they get more responsibility, the brother workers take it. The sister workers, as they age, the only place they had for an outlet for their own rage, their own trauma, is often to other sister workers, because they were the only ones lower on the totem pole than they were. And yeah, there was a lot of trauma there.
And what I'm really also trying to say is both can be true.
Yes.
And both are true. I feel strongly that they had a special kind of hell. And yes, there was a lot of abuse done for the reasons that you just described. And it's that simple. It's not more complicated than that. It's the reason we come home and kick the dog.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing. It's just that's what the system did to people. So
yeah, I mean, it's abuse is often taken out on those that are closest.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so Rhonda's asking a question. Good points. How do you arrive at those points with a friend? Each of us have good views, and we can agree to disagree. I know how to agree to disagree, but I want to hear you say it.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough question because you kind of just do it, but sometimes it can even be addressing that up front. It's like, we might not even agree on this subject, but let's just talk about it and agree that we're not going to disagree. But let me try to understand your point of view, and maybe you can try to understand my point of view without needing to change our points of view. Because a lot of times in conversation and discourse, people think they need to change the other person's viewpoint, or if somebody's telling their viewpoint to us that they're wanting us to change, but that doesn't need to be the case. I just want to understand how you think and what you're thinking, and then share what I'm thinking, and then we can, okay, I understand you now. I don't believe the same thing you're saying, but I understand why you do.
Right. Well, and I think it goes back to what you said earlier, that we are just not trained how to do that. We are trained that there's one
Correct.
right way. This is how you think. And so then the judgment filter comes down. Shoo. And it's hard. Daryl's saying, I arrived at that off ramp this last Wednesday. What a feeling.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Love
Congratulations.
that. Yes. Amen to that. Okay, my friend, I always give last word. Does anybody else have any other questions? Otherwise, we're going to wind this up. It will be posted on YouTube also for shareable. Anybody that wants to do that later. I'm going to give you last and final word. I want to thank you so much for being here today, Steve. This has been
Thanks
awesome.
for having me.
I can tell that you are someone that we just need to have this conversation on a regular basis. So if this is the best place to do it, or however you want to do that,
However works.
I've loved having this. I knew I was looking forward to this for a good reason, and definitely, for sure. So I'm going to give you last word.
All right. I don't know if I have any particular, but to me, it's just, don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Don't be afraid to speak your truth. And it's really important to learn how to communicate. Even when you don't know how, start with, you know what? I don't know how to say this, but I'm going to try. It's okay to screw up. It's the trying that matters.
Love that. Love that. Okay, my friend, you have an amazing day.